My parents faked a medical emergency to trick me into paying their debts, so I gave them a real emergency. I-22F went no contact with my parents 5 years ago, and honestly, it was the best decision I ever made. They were financial disasters who constantly lived beyond their means and expected everyone else to clean up their messes. They spent years borrowing money they had no intention of paying back, guilt-tripping family members into bailing them out, and pretending that their financial issues were never their fault. Unfortunately, I was their favorite target. Since I was their only child, they saw me as a walking ATM. By the time I turned 18, they had drained my savings, taken out a credit card in my name, which completely wrecked my credit score, and guilted me into lending them thousands with promises to pay me back as soon as they could. Spoiler, they never did. When I finally cut them off, I promised myself that no matter what sob story they came up with, I wouldn't give them another dime. And for 5 years I stuck to that promise. No contact, no handouts, nothing. Then out of nowhere my mom called me. At first I thought it was a mistake. She hadn't contacted me in years, so seeing her name pop up on my phone was a shock. I hesitated before answering, but a small, stupid part of me thought, maybe it's serious. Maybe something actually happened. The second I picked up, I heard sobbing. She was crying so hard it took her a few seconds to speak. "It's your dad," she gasped between sniffles. "He had a heart attack." I blinked. "What?" "It's bad," she choked out. "They don't know if he'll make it. He needs surgery. We don't have the money." And there it was. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "What hospital is he in?" There was a long pause. Too long. Then she sniffled and mumbled something about a small private clinic that didn't take patients without upfront payment. That was the first red flag. Most hospitals, especially ones handling emergency cases, don't require full payment before treatment. The fact that she was already making excuses for why they needed money immediately set off alarms in my head. "How much do they need?" I asked. She hesitated again. 15,000, a perfectly round number. Another red flag. I exhaled slowly. "I'll call the hospital and talk to them." "No," she yelped. Then, realizing how suspicious that sounded, she quickly added, "They won't talk to you because of privacy laws." That was the final red flag. I knew she was lying. Still, I played along. I told her I'd figure something out and hung up. Then I did what she didn't expect. I looked up the hospital she named and called them myself. I asked for my dad. The receptionist checked their records and said, "Sorry, we have no patient by that name." I wasn't surprised. I thanked her and hung up, furious. They had actually faked a medical emergency just to try and scam me out of $15,000. I could have left it at that. I could have just blocked her and moved on. But I was done letting them get away with this crap. If they wanted to play dirty, I was about to play dirtier. I started by reaching out to my aunt, my dad's older sister. Unlike my parents, she was actually a decent person, and she had always been critical of their spending habits. She had bailed them out before, but eventually got tired of their lies. When she picked up, she sounded surprised. "It's been a while. Everything okay?" I wasted no time. "Mom called me, said Dad had a heart attack and needed money for surgery." There was a pause. Then, "What?" "She wanted me to send 15 grand immediately," I said. "So I called the hospital to check." I didn't even need to finish this sentence. "They lied," she muttered. "Yup." Her anger was instant. "Those idiots, do they really think no one checks these things? I saw your dad last week. He was fine." I knew she would be pissed, but I wasn't calling just to vent. I needed backup. "You still talk to their landlord, right?" I asked. "Yeah, why?" I smiled. "I want to know how far behind they are on rent." She let out a sharp breath. "You think that's why they pulled this stunt?" "I'd bet money on it," I said. "They always do this when they're desperate." She didn't argue. She knew it was true. "I'll make a few calls," she said. "But I swear, if they're trying to pull something again—" "They are," I said, "and I want them to feel it." Less than an hour later, my aunt called back. "They're 3 months behind," she said. "Their landlord was already planning to evict them, but apparently your mom swore she had money coming in soon." I let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah, from me." "Well, now she doesn't," my aunt muttered, "and I think it's time their landlord knows that." I grinned. "Exactly what I was thinking." She didn't hesitate. She hung up and called the landlord immediately. Within a day, my parents got their eviction notice. And I wish I could say that was the best part, but no. The best part was that my mom actually had the nerve to call me from a different number to scream about how I had ruined their lives. "You're throwing us on the street," she shrieked. "No," I said calmly. "You did that to yourselves. Maybe you shouldn't have wasted money on scams instead of rent." She tried the guilt angle next. She wailed about how she and my dad had nowhere to go, about how I was their only child and how I was supposed to help them. I let her talk herself in circles before finally saying, if you had just asked for help, instead of trying to scam me, maybe things would have been different. Then I hung up. And this time, I didn't unblock her. But the fallout wasn't over yet. Blocking my mom's number should have been the end of it. I had caught her in her lie, shut her down, and refused to send them a single cent. Any normal person would have taken the loss and moved on. But my parents? They didn't know when to quit. 2 days later, my aunt texted me. Your mom showed up at my house. I called her immediately. Are you serious? She was waiting for me when I got home from work, my aunt said. She looked awful, like she hadn't slept in days. She said they had nowhere to go and begged me to talk to you. I already knew where this was going. And I told her to cut the crap, my aunt said. Told her I knew about the fake hospital stunt and that you weren't going to fall for it. Then she started crying, saying she was just a desperate mother trying to keep her family together. I let out a slow breath. She always pulls that card when she wants something. Yeah, and she kept at it for a while, my aunt said. She wanted me to convince you to at least help them get back on their feet. I told her that was never going to happen. I could imagine exactly how that conversation played out. My aunt had never taken my mom's nonsense, and she definitely wasn't about to start now. How did she take that? I asked. She stormed off, my aunt said. But I guarantee this isn't over. Watch your back. She was right. 2 days later, I came home from work and found my parents waiting outside my apartment building. My stomach sank. I should have expected this. They were backed into a corner, and when that happened, they escalated. I debated turning around and leaving, but my dad spotted me before I could. We need to talk. I stayed exactly where I was. No, we don't. My mom took a few steps forward, her voice softer now. Please, just hear us out. No, I said. You don't get to scam me and then act like I owe you a conversation. My dad clenched his jaw. You think you're better than us now? I think I have boundaries now, I shot back. He took another step closer, but I didn't move. We just need a little help. You always need help, I said, and you always expect me to be the one to fix it. My mom let out a shaky breath. We have nothing. We're on the verge of losing everything, I shrugged. Not my problem. Her expression twisted. How can you say that? We're your parents. You stopped being my parents the second you stole from me, I said. And you really stopped being my parents when you tried to scam me again. My dad's eyes darkened. So that's it? You're just going to leave us out in the cold? I'm going to let you deal with the consequences of your own actions, I corrected. He stood there for a long moment, hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. Then he muttered, You'll regret this, and turned away. My mom shot me one last look, half pleading, half furious, before following him. I went inside, locked the door, and exhaled. I had done it. I had finally stood my ground and refused to let them manipulate me. But they weren't finished yet. A week later, I found out exactly how low they were willing to go. I thought after I shut them down outside my apartment, they'd get the message and finally leave me alone. I was wrong. My parents were like cockroaches. They didn't go away, they just found new ways to be a problem. A week passed without any calls, texts, or unwanted visits, and I started thinking that maybe they had finally moved on. But then my aunt texted me again. Did you give your parents money? That made me pause. Of course not. I hadn't given them a single cent, and I wasn't about to start now. I replied, absolutely not. Why? Her response made my stomach turn. Your mom told everyone you finally forgave them and gave them enough to cover rent. I had to reread the text a few times just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. They were lying again, but this time it wasn't just to scam me, it was to scam other people. I immediately called my aunt. Who did they tell this to? Everyone, she said. I got a call from your uncle this morning. He said your mom told him you had a change of heart and wanted to help them out. She even said you paid off part of their old debts. I could feel my blood pressure rising. I don't have anything to do with them. They've been blocked for weeks. I figured, she said. But here's the thing. She's been using your name to guilt people into giving them money. I nearly dropped my phone. You're kidding. Wish I was, she said. They're telling people that you set an example by forgiving them, and now they just need a little more help to get back on their feet. A few people actually fell for it. I gritted my teeth. How much did they get? No idea, my aunt admitted. But I know at least 2 relatives sent them money. One of our cousins called me, thinking it was weird, so I figured I'd check with you first. I was beyond furious. My parents were using me as their credibility card. Since everyone knew I had cut them off, their biggest obstacle was convincing people they had actually changed. And what better way to do that than by pretending I had forgiven them and was financially supporting them again? I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I asked my aunt for the names of everyone they had spoken to, then spent the next few hours calling each and every one of them. I made it crystal clear that I hadn't given my parents a single cent and that they were lying. Some were shocked, others embarrassed that they had fallen for the scam. A few even promised to confront my parents about it, but I wasn't satisfied with just stopping the money flow. I wanted to make sure they couldn't do this to anyone else. So, I took things a step further. Since I still had access to their old landlord's contact info, I decided to check in. I knew they had been evicted, but I was curious to see if they had tried pulling any other scams. Turns out they had. The landlord told me my parents had written him a bad check right before they left. They had promised it would clear by the end of the month, but shockingly, it bounced. And since they were already gone, they figured they could get away with it. I asked him if he wanted their current whereabouts. He said absolutely. That's how I ended up giving their motel address to a very pissed off landlord who was ready to take legal action. But I didn't stop there. Since they had used my name to scam money out of family, I decided to hit them where it hurt, their reputation. I went to Facebook. Now, I don't normally post personal drama online, but in this case I made an exception. I wrote out everything, how they had tried to scam me by faking a medical emergency, how they had gone behind my back and lied to family members to get more money, and how they had burned every bridge they had. I ended it with, if they contact you asking for money, do not believe a word they say. They are liars and manipulators, and they will take your kindness and use it against you. If you want to help, don't. The best thing you can do is let them deal with the mess they created. Then I hit post. It spread fast. Family members started sharing it. Friends from my hometown commented, saying they had heard similar stories about my parents over the years. Even a few old acquaintances messaged me, saying they were glad I spoke up because my parents had scammed them too. Within an hour, my parents had been completely exposed. And that's when the messages started rolling in. First, my mom. How dare you put our business online like that? Take it down now. Blocked. Then my dad. You just ruined your own family. Hope you're happy. Blocked. Then one of their old friends trying to defend them. They're just struggling. Why would you make it worse? Also blocked. I had zero regrets. They wanted to use my name to manipulate people. They wanted to keep scamming their way through life. Fine. But now, everyone knew who they really were. The next morning, my aunt texted me again. Your parents lost their motel room, they couldn't pay for the week, and the owner kicked them out. I sat back, sipping my coffee, feeling an overwhelming sense of satisfaction. They had finally run out of people to manipulate. But the best part? 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A deep voice spoke. This is Officer Mitchell with Police Department. I'm looking for Mom and Dad. We have an open fraud case against them, and we were given your name as a potential witness. I almost dropped my phone. I cleared my throat. Yeah, I know exactly where they are. And just like that, their scamming days were officially over. Hearing a cop say there was an open fraud case against my parents was satisfying in a way I can't even describe. After years of watching them manipulate, steal, and scam their way through life, they were finally out of options. I sat up straighter. What exactly are they being investigated for? Officer Mitchell explained that my parents had pulled their bad check scam on more than just their old landlord. Apparently, after being evicted, they had tried to book multiple motels using fake checks, promising they'd have money coming in soon. Some of the owners caught on and kicked them out immediately, but one actually filed a police report. On top of that, a few family members who had sent them money after hearing their sob story had also come forward, claiming my parents had lied to them. The police were looking at potential fraud charges for taking money under false pretenses. Then he said the best words I had ever heard. We're trying to track them down. Would you happen to know their current location? I smiled. I sure do. I gave him the name of the last motel I knew they had been staying at, but I wasn't sure if they were still there. My aunt had said they were kicked out, but knowing my parents, they had probably scammed their way into another temporary living situation. Officer Mitchell thanked me and said he'd call back if they needed more information. I thought that would be the end of it, but 2 days later, my phone rang again. We got them, he said. They were caught trying to write another fake check at a grocery store. I almost laughed. You're kidding. Nope. The cashier recognized them from a police bulletin and stalled long enough for an officer to get there. They're being processed now. I had no words. My parents had spent their entire lives scamming people, manipulating others, and taking advantage of every situation they could. Now, they had scammed themselves straight into a jail cell. I thanked him and hung up, feeling lighter than I had in years. Over the next few weeks, I started getting messages from family members who suddenly had a lot to say. Some wanted details, some wanted to tell me they felt bad for giving my parents money, and some had the audacity to tell me I should have let it go. One message in particular stood out. "I hope you're happy. You got your own parents arrested." I rolled my eyes and replied, "No, they got themselves arrested." Then I blocked that number too. My parents were eventually released on bail, but things were different this time. The family members who used to enable them, they were done. No one was willing to house them. No one wanted to give them money. No one trusted a single word they said anymore. Without any support system left, they had to actually fend for themselves. My mom tried calling me one last time, probably to beg, probably to guilt trip me into helping. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. That was the last time I ever heard from them. It's been a year now, and I have no idea where they are. I don't care. They wanted to scam me. They wanted to manipulate people using my name. They wanted to keep living their lives with zero accountability. Well, now they finally had to deal with the consequences of their own actions. And the best part, for the first time in my life, it had absolutely nothing to do with me.